Okay, let's finish from last time. We had a few definitions to clarify, to make sure that we understand, or you have an understanding what is what. And I mentioned that you may have a number of different problems at the workplace. One of them is called a discipline problem. So let's define what discipline exactly means. And discipline means action taken by a manager to enforce the organization's rules, regulations, and principles. Okay? So a simple form of action for discipline which I'm taking, which is not very good, is lock the door. Those who are late more than 10 minutes cannot come to class anymore. Well, they'll come during the break. That's a simple form of discipline. All right. One of the measures which a manager can take is called employee counseling. So, when an employee has got a work-related problem, whatever the problem might be, usually there is an action that managers can take. It's called counseling or employee counseling. It is basically giving to the employee some sort of advice on what to do, how to do it, and how to resolve basic employment problems. Whether they may be training or they may be discipline problems, you basically cannot expect everyone to be perfect employee all the time. It just doesn't happen all the time. So in those cases, it may be that a simple help in the form of counseling could effectively resolve the problem. Sometimes employees are not aware, and that can happen especially for foreign employees or employees in a foreign culture, especially employees in a new workplace, in a new environment, or in a new job. Sometimes the job may be new to them, they may be good employees, and just a little bit of help, sometimes 5-minute conversation, can solve a lot of those job problems. Let's see what we have here. We have also a number of pay systems. And the most common, so what is a pay system? It is a system or a method approach which determines what a salary would be. Okay? Now you're trying to find it in PowerPoint. Keep searching. It's not there, not in PowerPoint. Unfortunately, the PowerPoint is not good. Most of the stuff is not in the PowerPoint, unfortunately, and that's why they've figured this out a few hundred years ago. It's called textbook. You'll have to read the textbook so that you can actually get, it's not in the PowerPoint. So compensation, the system is a method, approach, according to which you design the salaries of each and every worker. There are different compensation systems, but the most common in the world is called skills-based system. In a skills-based system, you pay the employee according to their skills. Back in the old days, they paid according to the product that they deliver. So, in a primitive system or the early system, you pay them exactly how much they produce. If they're producing widgets, if they produce 100 widgets, they get paid on a per piece basis. Later on, they were paid on a per hour basis. You go, you're a factory worker, you get paid by the hour. This works very well only for low-skilled type jobs, okay? For high-skilled type jobs, it is relatively difficult to work that way. Now, here is, now based on the skill-based approach, another very, very common problem. Another very common problem is that they say, oh, for example, if you're a professor, this is your salary. And they provide the same fixed salary for all professors in the university. But of course, professors like waitresses, like receptionists, like the lawyers, like doctors, they got very, very, very different skills. And you can have really good professors, you can have bad professors. The bad professor will be overpaid, and he's going to be very happy, and he's going to stay at the job. But the good professor is going to be underpaid. He could be, if he's really good, find a better paying job. So, in a system where we're trying to pay everybody the same amount of money, you have a very unintended consequence. You always keep the bad guys, and the good guys are not happy with the salary, and they leave. And that happens every time you try to give everybody the same salary. That was an early problem in the US American education system until they figured out, well, it doesn't take a long time to figure out that, well, you have to pay these professors a lot more than those professors. As an example, well, numbers are not exact, but they're close. A professor in mathematics can make about, let's say in the United States, $40,000 US. 40,000 US dollars, and a professor in accounting and finance can make easily 120,000 US dollars. So professors making 3 times difference. Professor in economics would be making about 60,000. Professor in finance could be about 140,000. Now, try to think the same logic through with doctors. You got a whole bunch of different doctors, and someone is a heart surgeon, and it requires very high specialty and skills. Someone is a, let's say, brain surgeon, requires specialty and skills. And there may be some other type of doctor related to relatively innocent diseases, like you have some joint problem, which is not a really big problem. Of course, it's not a surgeon type. So you will try to do the same salary for all doctors. It's just not going to work. You're not going to get brain surgeon doctors. You're not going to get all of those high-skilled job doctors. And now comes the last piece. You're going to say, well, but what if no single hospital wants to pay them more because they're brain surgeons or heart surgeons, but they want to get a higher salary, right? And hospitals aren't going to pay them. Well, that's where competition enters. If hospitals don't pay them, but they think they have better skills, they themselves are going to open a heart surgery hospital, and they themselves will charge the higher salary, okay? And they will be able to attract the other good brain surgeons or heart surgeons, okay? So the market, as long as it's free and as long as it's competitive, will always find a way around it. And of course, now we're getting back to receptionists. The same applies for receptionists. You can try to keep all the salaries equal, but the better ones will always say, well, I'm better than the others and I can find another job. in another place. Same thing applies for waitresses, same thing applies for any other job. Just trying to keep the salary the same is a very, very, very difficult proposition. What you'll be getting is keeping the bad employees and losing the good employees. So, one of the major goals of any compensation system is to reward the better employees with a higher salary and benefit. It's to reward them so that you can keep them. Now, the most common approach, let's say in waitressing, is you give them a simple percentage of the turnover. We call it the customer revenue. Maybe you give them 1% or maybe you give them 2%. So that they work on a fixed based salary, which is just what we call a base salary. And then you give them a certain percentage. So if they make 100,000 baht revenue for the month, you will give them, I don't know, maybe 5%, and you give them 5,000 baht extra. So that's a simple, easy incentive system that one can use. Of course, you can also use a system on a customer basis. Okay, you've served so many customers, or some other form of, we call variable pay. So pay or salary will have a fixed component, which is what you give them no matter what happens, and a variable component. And the variable component will depend on their performance. The number of customers, the number of sales, the number of pieces they have worked, the number of whatever they are supposed to do. A simple variable for professors is, well, you gotta teach 12 hours per week. And if you have more hours, we'll give you extra on a per hour basis. For example, that's a simple way to do it. So, the goal, let me repeat because it's important for any pay system, for any compensation system, is to reward good employees so that you're able to retain the good employees. As I explained last time, the problem is very simple. You always get to lose the good employees. Okay, so now we're moving to some contemporary issues. Let's see if these are good or not good. Yeah, some stuff. Is one of the most common issues, especially since the global financial crisis in 2008, and I know it's going to last 5 or 6 years, and it keeps going on and will continue to go on for many, many years, because the global financial crisis has not been solved in any way. The causes of the global financial crisis are too much borrowing and too much debt by consumers, by businesses, and especially by financial institutions, by banks and by governments. And the debt which drives, or let's call it underlies the crisis, has not been resolved. Which means that it may take another 3, another 5, or another 10 years for the crisis to go on. Okay? And if that's the case, businesses will have hard times and they'll need to continue downsizing. They'll have to continue downsizing. Downsizing is basically reducing the number of employees in order to cut costs. So, what are some of the strategies, or what are the common tips for downsizing? Well, tip number 1 is fairly straightforward. You communicate with employees openly and honestly. You'll have to tell the employees, look, we're going to be downsizing, we're going to be losing people. Maybe every 3 months we'll have to lay off 5 or 10% of the employees. Now, I can tell you my own experience at Sterling Commerce, where I was working. It was a subsidiary of SBC Communications. Is I started in March of 2000 working there. And in March of 2000, that was exactly the time where we say that the dot-com and the telecom bubble burst, and all of the software in the telecommunications industries were in trouble. And I just began my job at the peak of the bubble. And soon enough, less than 3 months later, the company began to lay people off. Just complete layoffs. Actually, it's firing. So we were at the company about 2,700 people at the time. About, let's just say, 3,000 people. And every 3 months, the end of the quarter comes, and they will lay off 300 people. 3 months later, 300 people. 3 months later, 300 people. 3 months later, 300 people. And then they did this for a long time. I was able to survive 7 layoff waves. So you call this a layoff wave. The end of the quarter comes, they lay off 300 people. Then another 300. Then another 300. Then another 300. So I was able to survive 7 layoff waves, but at the end, the 8th one caught me too. When I was left working there in 2003, late 2003, they were from 3,000 people, only 1,200 left. When the number 8 caught me from 1,200, the company went down to 1,000. Now, I keep in contact with some of the people who left working there, and just 2 years later, they were barely 500 people. So the company, the business can easily shrink 5 or 6 times. Sometimes it can easily shrink as much as 10 times in order to survive. Okay? Now, with us, they did not make it openly, well, they did the honest part, but they didn't do the open part in the sense that they would not tell us in advance they're going to be laid off and all the other stuff. Now, I can see the accounting data, and I can see the sales data and say, oh yeah, the company still got a problem. We're still losing revenue is shrinking. We're still losing profits, meaning we're running at a loss. And I can easily see or forecast that there will be a layoff at the end of the quarter because the business cannot survive otherwise. But basically is you make open and honest communication. Part of it is to, inform those that you're going to let them go as soon as possible. Now, that's one strategy. The other strategy is you want to surprise the employees. You want to surprise them, and when you lay them off, you don't want to give them a chance or an opportunity to do damage. Sometimes employees will have the attitude, oh, I have sacrificed for this business. I worked 5 years, I worked 10 years for this business. I've been working evenings, I've been working weekends, and now you're laying me off and they can do damage. Well, they won't usually set the business on fire, but for example, if you're in a hotel business, they can delete most of the data in the reservation system, okay? That's good enough to create a big mess for the hotel if you lose all the reservations, okay? And especially if they understand how the system works, they will make sure that you cannot recover the system. So they can put in hundreds of new reservations, they can delete the old reservations. If they know how the system works, they can probably do damage to it. especially computer systems. In computer systems, sometimes a computer specialist can easily say, delete the whole database, delete the whole computer, in the sense of reformat the hard drive, okay? Or you got an employee, he's got a lot of valuable information on his computer, the employee may just delete the information. That's the one way to do it. The other thing that the employee can do is can steal the information. For example, when I was working in the sales department, I would know, well, that was part of my job, who are the customers of the company, what products they bought, how much they paid, and all the other information. That's what I was doing. I was developing the sales information system that would later on connect with the accounting system. So I would have a pretty good detailed information of exactly who the customers are and the companies and the contacting and all the other stuff. Well, you can steal the information and then go to the competitor and say, look guys, I'm coming from this company, they just laid me off, and I got extremely valuable information. I can give you the top 1,000 corporate customers or business customers of our business, and maybe you can try and steal a few of them. Even if you steal 100 of those 1,000 customers, it's going to be a tremendous profit worth for you, millions. And they might say, okay, we're going to buy the information, we're going to pay $50,000 or $10,000 or whatever deal you make for the stolen information. If it's with a reservation system, you might say, hey, I have all the reservations for the coming, let's say, season, and you're going to sell those reservations, the information of the customer, to the competing hotel, okay? So basically, you sell the information to the competitor, and the competitor can benefit from it with the information. So sometimes you may want not to warn the employees and to surprise them when you come one morning and they just come to your desk and say, hey, we need you to come with us over. And when you go there and say, look, there's been a new wave of layoffs, 300 people are gone this morning. Unfortunately, you were one of them. We have a nice, good, it's called severance package. Let me see the word severance. Let me write it out. Severance. You're supposed to get the camera pointed there, right? So maybe zoom in a little bit. If it's not comfortable, you can sit closer to the camera, right? So it's called severance, is the process of laying an employee off, and this becomes, it's called severance pay. And it was a corporate policy for my company. Now I can get back to normal. That they will pay an employee, they will provide a 3 months severance pay. 3 months severance pay means, okay, you sign all the documents, everything's good, everything's clean, you're going to do fine, no problems, and we'll give you 3 months paycheck. In other words, they're going to give you 3 salaries for the 3 coming months, okay? So that's one of the ideas. Okay, so inform those as soon as possible. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes what you may say is, hey, we're going to have a layoff. It's coming in January, meaning next month, and we're going to have 300 people going, but we don't know who, and we're going to try to find, we're going to be working on the details. Another one is tell surviving employees the new goals and expectations. So you have to deal not only with those that you lay off, but you have to deal with the surviving employees. employees. Surviving employee is an employee which stays on the job after some of the employees are gone. As I mentioned to you, I survived 7 times, but the number 8 got me in 2004. So 7 times I survived, so every time they gotta tell you, you're gonna be doing this, you're gonna be doing this. One of the problems with the surviving employees is that they're not getting a raise in the salary. They get to keep the same salary, but get to keep some of the work of their employees. Think of it as a reception in a hotel. Before, you had 8 people working at the reception. Now you got 6. Well, 6 people would have to work the same, almost the same amount of work of 8 people from yesterday, okay? So the surviving employees will be getting more work. And of course, some of them are not going to be happy about it. And you have to explain the impact, or the impact is the same as effect. What is the effect of the layoffs? Basically, you got to tell, hey guys, this is what the business is, and this is what the business reality is, and we got to deal with reality. And it's very simple. We have to lay off some people so that the company can survive, and those that survive, your jobs can possibly remain. If they don't lay off some of the people, then the whole business goes bankrupt and everybody loses the job. So you got an option. You either lay off some of the people and try for the business to continue, or you wait until the time where the whole business closes down. Next one is, you gotta follow, you guys, how about the 2 of you in the back? Just separate, yeah, on the back, yeah. Or your friend, one of you, just separate, because you just, keep talking and keep playing, and then just the 2 of you, separate somehow. Yeah, the 2 of you in the back. Yeah, you just keep talking and playing. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but... So, you have to follow any laws. So, you need to understand what is the law or the regulation in the particular country. And in every country, it's going to be different. In France, it's going to be different from Germany, it's going to be different from the UK, it's going to be different from the US, certainly different from Thailand or Vietnam or any other. And you have to follow regulating, and here it is. Severance pay or benefits. That's the same severance pay that I gave you over there. Sometimes they will say, okay, we're also going to give you a certain benefits. We're going to extend your health care insurance for another 3 months. Now, there is a general rule, which is not a law, but is followed, that the higher the position of the employee, the bigger will be the severance pay. So an ordinary employee would get 2 or 3 months of severance pay. Well, a manager, low or mid-level manager, let's say low-level manager, could get 4 months of severance pay. A mid-level manager could easily get 6 months of severance pay. And a high executive could possibly get 9 months or 12 months of severance pay. So they usually like to take care of the very high executives, and they give them a very high severance pay. Okay? Next one, provide support and counseling for surviving employees. Turns out that sometimes the company will have major problems with surviving employees. Now, surviving employees you would think will be very thankful and very happy because they got a job. You know, all the others lost their job. Oh, I can still keep my job. But that's not in the real world. In the real world, not all employees are that kind of thankful. They're not happy at all that they got to pick up the work of other employees. Also, some of them may get scared. They may really get scared and say, man, this place is no good. I better prepare and leave before they, before they actually lay me off. Now, me seeing all the problems in my company, I said, geez, if I get laid off, I'm going to be in serious trouble. I got a mortgage on a house to pay. I got this. I'm going to get visa problems. I'm going to be in really, really, really big trouble if I get laid off. And then I got to think, well, what do I need to do in case I get laid off? How do I prepare myself? And I can analyze 100 different ways, but I reached a very simple conclusion. If I can get to sell my house and I don't have any debt, and I got a bunch of savings, then I'm okay. If they lay me off, I can last 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. I'm still going to have maybe 6 months or 9 months or whatever of a visa, let's say 12 months of a visa, which is still remaining valid. And if things get really bad, I can just get on the plane and get back home to my home country in Bulgaria, okay? And guess what? This is actually exactly what happened. In 2003, seeing the bad prospects of the company, I sold my house, moved to a nice little apartment right next to my job, had zero debt, had a good amount of savings back then, that's 10 years ago, made some good investments, and said, hey, if they lay me off, no big deal. Well, 6 months everything was okay, and in January 2004 I got laid off. And at that point, I started looking for a job, and here is now another government system of unemployment benefit. Unemployment benefit is money which government pays you for a fixed period of time when you lose your job, okay? And at that time, it was an economic crisis, and they extended, if I remember correctly, the unemployment benefit up to 9 months, okay? Well, they also say how many months of severance pay I got. So I got 3 months of severance pay from the compensation. And then the unemployment benefit I got for 9 months. And suddenly, looking for a job for a month, and I say, hey, no need to look for a job. I can just collect the unemployment money. The unemployment money is big, it's generous, I'm living modestly, I have no debt, I have no credit cards, I have no car payments, house payments, or anything. All I'm paying is rent and food. And for rent and food, that's more than enough. So suddenly I said, hey, no need to work anymore, no need to do anything, I'll just collect the unemployment benefit. And when the unemployment benefits expire, they expired for me in November, in December, I'll just go back to my home country and leave the United States permanently and not go back. And that's exactly what really happens. I just lived there, I had 11 months, good time, didn't have to look for a job, didn't have to work, didn't have to do anything, just paid vacation, right? It's just 11 months of paid vacation, 3 months due to my previous work in the corporation, 9 months due to the government, for which I was paying the previous 8 years. I was paying taxes, of course, and unemployment benefits, social security benefits. So basically, I got an extended vacation, and I was getting paid for it, and when the payment stopped, I just got all of my, well, I prepared most of my stuff and left that. So that's the example of how it's done. But the point is different. Some employees could be in serious trouble. They will have a mortgage payment on the house, and they may have a car payment. And when they get laid off, suddenly their whole world collapses. Usually they lose the house, usually they lose the car, usually they lose most of their stuff. And in America, not necessarily in here, you're going to tell me this happens in here. If a wife sees that her husband loses his job, loses the house, and loses the car, the wife is just going to leave the guy. All right? So immediately after that, you get a divorce. And that's extremely common, at least in the West. It's like, well, if he doesn't have the car and the house and the job and the money, why be with him? You know, why be with a loser? You just leave him and find another husband, okay? Or another man to take care of you. And that's quite common. So sometimes employees will react violently. Now, there have been very few cases, but these do happen when the angry employee, you know, when he is told that he's got a whatever, he goes back home, brings the gun, and starts shooting at the workplace anybody that they can see because they're angry or because they just realize that their life goes down. Next one, provide counseling. Okay. So you need to provide counseling also for surviving employees, that's clear. You also need to reassign roles. You need to redistribute work for those who survive. You need to give them roles. You say, hey, you're going to be picking up the work of this guy, you're going to be picking up the work of those guys. Or because I survived it 7 times, they say, look, the 2 of you will have to divide the work of that person too, okay? And focus on boosting morale. Morale is like the spirit of remaining employees. So you have to offer them individualized reassurance, at least to say, look, we're not going to fire for the next few months, there won't be any more, whatever. Basically, they say you gotta lie to them. Okay, lying is, you know, how you keep them reassured. Okay, continue to communicate, especially one-on-one. One-on-one means a manager and employee sit together without anyone else and they discuss the prospects of that particular employee. All right? So I'm expecting now with my department chair a one-on-one meeting where they're going to explain to me if I'm going to be continuing to teach you in October here or not. And remain involved and available. So if you're a manager, you got to be involved. You are dealing with a highly stressful situation. You can actually feel the stress is in the air, even though there's no real layoff. Just because you had a layoff a week ago, people are tense. They are worried. You don't hear the normal noise in the office. You don't see the normal movement in the office. Things are a little bit quiet. They're depressingly quiet. That's because people are indeed depressed and worried at the same time. And I can talk with it because I told you I lived in the course of 3 years, they've been layoff, 7 of them. So I've been working in that type of a corporate environment. So layoffs are some of the issues. The key words which they give here in the textbook is number 1 is stress. So the situation is very stressful. The second key word is frustration. Maybe one of you will have to open those little iPads or iPhones to translate frustration. People are frustrated. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going to happen to them. So part of the problem is general uncertainty. And the uncertainty is magnified many times over if you got a house to pay, if you got a car to pay, if you got a wife and maybe a few children to take care of. Things get very complicated in your life. Number 3 is called anxiety. People are just anxious. They don't know what's going on, okay? Many of them start working actually less and less. They say, hey, why work hard if I'm going to get laid off in 3 months anyway, okay? I may as well prepare my exit from the company. Others just start looking for jobs. They are working on the job, but instead of working, they're on the computer searching for jobs. They say, hey, I got 3 more months. I can use the office time to find me another job. And they say, okay, who are our best competitors and the hardest competitors? And you actually call the competitors and say, hey, we got problems over whatever it is, looking for a job. We're going to hire an employee from a competing company, okay? So that can possibly work. So stress, frustration, anxiety, and the last one is anger. Sometimes employees are just angry. Now they might not show it in the office, or they might not bring a gun and start shooting in the office, but they will be internally angry. They'll be angry at what's going on around them and at what could happen to them. And this overall problem is called the layoff survival sickness. It's a layoff survival sickness. So those that survive the layoff, they suffer from a particular disease called the layoff survival sickness. That's on page 203. And these are the attitudes, perceptions, and behaviors of surviving employees. Suddenly the employees change. They're not the same employees. They don't have the same type of motivation. They're not as working as hard. And again, frustrated, angry, anxious, worried. Job insecurity. Job insecurity. This is the key word. Suddenly, they don't know what they're doing, okay, with their lives and other things. All right. So that's about downsizing. It's a big topic. Let's see what else they have. Number 2, workforce diversity. Yeah, you have to manage workforce diversity. Sometimes it's not easy. Managing men and women and young and old with different cultures, different nationalities, different races. It is not easy to manage workforce diversity. Well, just as it is not easy, it's even harder to manage customer diversity. Where you have an 8-year-old child and a 15-year-old child and a 70-year-old customer, let's say at a restaurant, it is not easy to manage customer diversity. Some are Christians, some are Muslims. Here you will probably have Jews, you'll have Buddhists, okay? So you're going to have all sorts of different. And some, when you're in a hotel, they don't want to sleep west, the head pointing west because of religious reasons. For others, they don't want their bed to point east, okay? For others, they don't want the bed to point north, right? Others don't want to eat this or whatever. So you may have, or people may have different type of sickness, like they're not tolerant to spicy food. For some reason, they can't eat spicy food, okay? And that could cause some problems. Others, maybe it's called lactose intolerant, meaning they cannot handle milk. So if you got a little bit of a milk in the product, suddenly they get allergic to it. So you may have to deal with these, so they're not really, really sick people, like contagious if they're sick to make you sick, okay? But they may have some particular, it's called food intolerance. For example, in the United States, in the UK, and now in Europe, one of the most common food intolerance is peanut intolerance. So if you get peanut in the food, suddenly they can get, it's called rash. They can just, they may have breathing and other problems going on. So you have to be very careful about diversity and whatever the problems might be. If you got kids, you may have to have in your business Wi-Fi, because the kids go crazy unless they got a Wi-Fi to play their mobile, right? But if you got a little younger teenagers, you better have Wi-Fi to entertain them with YouTube or Facebook, because these kids, like 12-year-old kids, will go crazy in the hotel or in the restaurant and then I'll have to play with something. So you gotta be thinking and worrying about these type of diversity of customers, which is one big problem in its own, and diversity of employees, which is a completely different problem altogether. Let's see what we have, and we take a little break here. Well, that's it for the moment.